Hi, and welcome to ThreatTraq Essentials, where we take a look at some everyday cybersecurity advice that we can get from this week's ThreatTraq stories. I'm here with Matt Kaiser, who's on the show this week. How you doing, Matt?
Doing all right, Don. How are you doing?
Great. So, Matt, let's first talk about the story that you brought to us, which was about a wormable bug in SMB. Tell me what SMB is and how this bug would work.
So SMB is one of the protocols that get used for a lot of different things within Windows, but primarily you probably know it for Windows file sharing or sharing printers on your local network. You might also know it from being one of the protocols that was affected during WannaCry a couple of years ago. That was actually a protocol that was exploited using the Eternal Blue exploit by the WannaCry virus. So in this case, what we've got is another potentially wormable exploit called SMB Ghost, again, in SMB. The situation is that someone has released code that not every time, but most of the time can be used to exploit SMB remotely. The same kind of thing that you would worry about with a WannaCry-like virus where you can use it to go from machine to machine to machine if they're not patched. So at this point, it is more likely that someone's going to be able to write a viable worm for this vulnerability, and it's time for people to patch if they haven't already patched.
Is there any other advice we'd want to give people to protect themselves here?
I think in general, being aware of patching. If you are the person at home adminning your network, I would personally turn patching on automatically. Just have your machine do it for you instead of having to worry about it. Um, I would also say that if you are a professional admin, maybe you've got machines that are your responsibility for a corporate environment. Um, if you use SMB in any way, make sure you're not exposing it to the internet anywhere. The most likely way that this is going to become a problem, if it does become a problem, is that someone's going to write a worm and release it to the internet, and it's going to go out and look for open ports that are internet exposed. So, if your ports aren't open to the internet, you're not going to be affected by this, most likely.
Now, Andy Benavides brought us a story about some Java-based ransomware. Tell me about that.
So this is a Java-based ransomware. It's called Tycoon. It seems to be targeting educational institutions and software developers, which I think is a little bit different than what we usually see. It's written in Java, and Java by design is cross-platform, meaning you can write it in one place and run it on Windows. You can run it on Linux. Any place that supports Java, in theory, this code should run on. So it is kind of a dangerous thing. The other thing that's unique about it is that it is created in such a way that it might be overlooked by antivirus or anybody looking for malware just because of the way that it's written. It's something using something called a JImage format, and most executable Java code that you would come across in the wild is going to be in a jar file, a different type of format. So this is an interesting little trick that these ransomware authors are using.
So, Matt, how do you prevent yourself from getting this ransomware?
So that's a very interesting question because most people would immediately leap to turn off Java. But the folks who are writing and using this ransomware, and I do think they are the same people who wrote it, they are getting onto people's networks through remote desktop ports that are open. So they got on, they put in a backdoor, they left for a while, they came back, and then they ran the ransomware. So the initial point of compromise was not Java related at all. It was remote desktop protocol. So my strong suggestion is that anyone who's putting remote desktop protocol out on the internet for admin reasons, and I can see my people might be tempted to do it, I would recommend strongly that you put it behind some sort of VPN or you find some other way of gaining remote access into these systems because they're getting in through that. And then once they're in, that's when they do the real damage.
And finally, Jim Clausing brought us a story about a machine in the middle bug, TLS. What is a machine in the middle bug?
Basically, that if you have two endpoints, two machines that are talking to each other, if you can insert a third machine into there, that's machine in the middle. If both endpoints don't even know that somebody else is mediating that transmission, that's machine in the middle. So what we're seeing here is that TLS typically is used to encrypt traffic and also to identify who you're talking to, through certificates. There is a provision in the protocol for if a session gets dropped, you lose your communication for a second, that you can rejoin the thing without a whole lot of work. Unfortunately, that resumption has a bug in it, and it's not properly checking who's talking to who. So if you manage to fake one of the endpoints and the session drops, someone else can come in and resume. So what you can do with that is if you can force that connection to drop, you can resume it from both ends and you can be that machine in the middle.
Well, that definitely sounds like something you don't want to happen. So how do you protect yourself?
At this point, there is a patch for this. If you are somebody using these libraries, specifically the GNU TLS libraries, make sure that the software that you maintain is patched. If you're a regular user, just make sure that all the software that you've got running is patched. I don't know of a comprehensive list of what software uses GNU TLS, but most developers who rely on it are probably keeping a real close eye on this bug and making sure that they're covered. There are going to be a few stragglers, I think, a few situations where machines may not get properly patched, or that someone is using the library in a way that it's sort of combined with their software instead of being pulled in from the outside, and that specific software has to patch itself rather than relying on everybody else's patch. The best you can do, as a regular user is, again, just make sure that your software is up to date.
Well, thank you, Matt. Thanks for all that great advice. And those of you watching, if you want to keep up with great advice every week, please like and subscribe below. And if you want to take a deeper look at any of these stories, click on the playlist below. We'll see you next time.